abruptly broke off their relationship and started seeing her sister Martha. Okay, Korean drama going on right here. Okay, Esther. Of course not, no. Oh. Oh. Man, that's rough. Okay, so you guys understand the situation, right? Let's keep going, Danielle. Okay, so we start to see that Meg's life, she's holding on to this bitterness for a very long time, but she actually is the one that's really, really miserable. Continuing on, Aram. Okay. So again, this is a very extreme case, but this is, again, a good example of somebody who's just living in anger because she can't forgive, and she's basically blaming another person, maybe rightly so, but again, we could see that she, even until the day she dies, she's like, I don't want anything to do with her. Okay, that I wish the worst thing upon her, that she is actually dying. So it's really interesting. Because of her bitterness and blame game, even though Meg actually tried to come, or Martha tried to come and actually ask for forgiveness, yeah, Meg didn't even want that. So it's very interesting. All right, let's go on. June. Okay, does that make sense? So there is a phrase, right? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Basically, if you cut my arm, then I'm going to cut your arm. If you kill me, or if you kill somebody, then you're going to die as well. And that's actually in the Bible. A lot of people actually don't know that that's actually in the Old Testament. But the purpose of that was because what people would do is if somebody cut my arm off, they would kill them instead. So it was unfair punishment. Does that make sense? And so God was trying to say, no, 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 right? They have done no harm, then it has to be fair. Okay, it can't be over the top, because that's what normally we would do. We do over the top kind of revenge. Okay, anyways, continuing on. Let's continue. Stephen? Punish. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so people who are holding on to resentment and they said, okay, right, the amount of pain they have done to me, they need to receive that same amount of pain. And number one, I mean, most of the time, how do you even measure that? Right? How do you, like, if you have been bitter for 2-3 years, like how do you measure that amount of pain? Right? That's one of the reasons why, even if you do, so quote unquote, get revenge back on somebody, or something bad happens to them, it's never satisfying. Okay, so again, you never, even though something bad, a curse could happen to some person, you always feel like justice hasn't been done. Okay, so again, the person who's holding on to anger, who's playing the blame game, they never win. It's always a losing game. All right, continuing on. Long. Okay, so there's two reasons the author talks about why we blame others. The second one Stephen talked about, which is we want to protect ourselves. We feel this burden of embarrassment or punishment, responsibility, and we go, oh, I can't bear this, so I'm going to hand it off to somebody. And then the first reason, actually, this is something that we didn't think about, but which is this idea of like, oh, if I blame other person, then other people are going to pity me and listen to me and say, oh, you poor thing, and that awful people. And so I feel supported by blaming others. Okay, because there's an enemy. It's not me. Continuing on. Path to nowhere. Face it, we want to blame others. When we have been hurt or think that we have, something in us wants to place the blame on somewhere, or usually on someone else. But the more we blame, the further we walk down the dangerous path of bitterness. And this is exactly what we saw with Meg and Martha as well. The path never leads us to health and happiness, only into deeper distress. Right? So again, there's reasons why we do the blame game, but blame game never ends well. Okay, happiness has never come by you blaming somebody. Never ever. You might feel a little bit better, but blame game, again, it's a road to nowhere. Esther? Mm-hmm. Okay, do you guys see? Okay, again, these are psychologists messing around. But basically, again, you're messed up. Why? Because of your parents. Why are your parents messed up? Because of their parents. Okay, and you guys see it's just going to keep going and going and going. Aram? And in the end, this is actually what we do. We don't realize it, but in the end, we end up blaming God. The blaming game, it ends up somewhere, which is always God. Okay, continuing on, Richard. Okay, so again, I think the author has made a pretty good argument of why blaming game doesn't work. So instead, hey, again, the whole purpose is there's reasons why we blame, but it doesn't help us. Instead, let's go towards forgiving. Long, if you could read the next one for us. Okay, so this is a couple lessons ago. Do you guys remember? A lot of people say, oh, you got to just forget the past, forget everything, and then that's forgiveness. But we said, no, that's actually not a correct definition of forgiveness. We said real forgiveness is actually remembering what happened in the past, acknowledging that, and then moving forward. Okay, so again, forgiveness is not, oh, forget the past, oh, I'm going to just forget it and just move on. That's not forgiveness. Okay, real forgiveness is actually remembering what someone has done to us and then moving forward. Now, okay, then what's the difference between remembering and blaming then? Because blaming is remembering, right? You're saying, oh, this person has hurt me. But remembering also is, hey, this person has done this to me. So what's the difference? And that's where we're going. Danielle? Okay, do you guys see the difference? So both of them, both remembering and blaming, yes, you are trying to correctly, okay, place the blame, not blame, but place the responsibility, or okay, place the hurt that somebody has done, okay, to the correct person. So for some of you, okay, this is very difficult, but okay, for some of you guys, you might blame yourself, or okay, let's do this. Some of you guys, you might blame your parents or blame somebody that you are bitter or angry towards. Okay? And so you have to think about, okay, what is their responsibility and what is my responsibility in this case? And so you have to correctly understand that. Okay? But there's some of you guys who are saying, no, it's all my fault. It's my fault. I did this. Especially when it comes to parents and children. Children do this a lot. And that's why we have to talk about this, which is because like parents were like God to us when we were little, obviously. And they were our support system and security. What we do a lot of time as children is we place all the blame on ourselves. Okay, now, I'm not saying that there's no blame, okay, that we should take on and we should always blame our parents, okay? But there are certain things that we have to understand our parents did to us that we need to actually put the responsibility towards them. Does that make sense? So basically the idea of remembering is properly placing what exactly happened. Whether it's I need to divide the responsibility or what happened, whether they hurt me or whether I had some part to do with it. Does that make sense? I know this is kind of complicated, but it's basically to assess correctly. Okay? After that, if you just say, it's their fault, okay, or it's my fault, this happened, then that's blaming. Because you're not getting anywhere. But if you say, okay, they did mess up, or I did mess up, but I want some kind of solution or I want some kind of healing, that's remembering them. Do you guys understand the difference between remembering and blaming? So think of it as blaming as you're just stuck in a place and that you're not willing to move forward, whereas remembering, okay, again, you look at the past and you assess exactly what happened so that you can move forward. Whereas blaming is you assessed and go, oh, you see, my parents were wrong. They're horrible people. And I'm going to hate them even more. That's not where you want to get to. Okay? Instead, you want to say, okay, this is exactly what happened. Oh, maybe it was my fault. Or maybe it wasn't my fault. Maybe it was my parents' fault. Or that girl or that guy's fault. But how do I go forward? And that's the whole point of remembering. Okay. Let's see if these sentences will help what I explained. Stephen? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I hope the paragraph makes sense because I just explained all of this. Okay, so once again, the idea is yes, in the beginning, it is blame in the sense that you are shifting the responsibility. Okay, you're again correctly putting whether it's on them or it's on me or maybe it's a half and half or whatever, right? You have to correctly assess it. Okay, all right, continuing on. Ashley? Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so again, I think this sentence is really good, right? Again, we have to lift the false blame, whether that's yourself or maybe there's false blame that you are putting on the other person. So again, that's where you have to really assess. And again, having a pastor or having a counselor, having a really good friend, okay? But you have to be careful again because you have to find a friend who's going to be like, who's not going to just be on your side and say, oh yeah, your parents are horrible or that person is horrible, and then it doesn't work out. Okay, but you need somebody who's really able to assess the situation to see, okay, maybe it's not your fault, or maybe some of these things you think it's the other person's fault, but maybe you have something to do with it. All right. Question? Yes, question. Yeah. Sure, 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 sure. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. So the question is, when people just want to come to us to vent and talk about their stuff, and if we just say, "Well, you were actually wrong on this," and you assess, then they get upset. Yeah. So, so I would say, if they're coming to you and they're not saying like, "I want," like, I think it's a little bit different in the sense that if they're coming to you just to vent, like just to like they just are so frustrated and they just want to vent, I think the first thing you have to do is just listen and just go listen and go, oh wow, like oh man. And so instead of doing maybe using like evaluative words like oh she's wrong or you're wrong or he's wrong, instead just try to empathize with their emotions, whether they're wrong or not. For them at least, that emotion is real to them, or what they perceive is real to them as they're talking, and that's why they're sharing that with you, right? So you can just say, wow, because of this, oh, you felt really upset or you felt really frustrated because of that. So even though in your mind you go, oh, I think she's wrong or I think he's wrong, you could still empathize with them, and once they kind of like get it all through, sometimes they might say, now that I talked about it, I realized maybe I was wrong. And they might say that, or they might not say that. And if they are emotionally ready to hear that, then you could also talk to them too. So that's what I think I would do. If somebody came to me and they were just talking and very emotional, then hey, like, dude, that really sucks, and like empathize with them. But if you feel like they are ready, or if they come to you and say, I really want help, then you could, again, help them to assess. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. All right. Danielle? Okay, so again, we need to assess. Okay, what's my blame? What's their blame? What's my responsibility? What's their responsibility? Assess, assess, assess. Then again, okay, what can I do in the situation? Okay, what's my part? Because most of the time what we do is we assess, we might assess well, but we go, okay, that person needs to do this. How come that person isn't doing this? Okay, so again, then it goes into the blame, like really, really into the blame game. And they go, I've done this, and they don't do anything. But instead, the focus is, what can I do? Okay, because you can't change the other person. Okay, and we talked about how forgiveness is not a two-way street. Right? You can always, even if they don't accept it, you can always forgive someone. Right? Same thing with love. You could always love somebody, even if they treat you like dirt. Right? Love, forgiveness, these are always choices. Of course, they might not accept it, of course. All right, so here's an example of someone who actually let go and took responsibility. Here's an example. Rhonda described herself as a flaming codependent. When her husband began, and codependent, we'll see what that means. When her husband began to drink heavily, she moved into the classic codependent stance towards him. She cast herself in a role that enabled her husband to avoid facing consequences of his alcoholism, thus making it easier for him to continue to operate as an alcoholic. If he had a hangover and felt too bad to go to work, she called in and made excuses for him. Does that make sense? So she enabled him to continue to do these things. Okay. Esther. Okay. So again, eventually it came to a place where she was covering for him, but then the husband turned around and said, I have all of this alcoholism problem because of you. It's all your fault. Okay, you're to blame. Okay, so again, she has a wrong view of who to blame, but to herself, her husband's alcoholic problem is her problem. It's her. She's at fault. Okay, continuing on, let's see what happens. Adam? Okay, so again, this is where the assessment is. Of course, she enabled him afterwards, after he became an alcoholic, to continue on this habit. So in that sense, you see, Rhonda did something wrong as well. But again, the whole idea that he became alcoholic because of her, that itself is wrong. Does that make sense? All right, continuing on. Long. Okay. And that's where we really need to go as well. Okay, we need to assess correctly, okay, what happened? Who hurt who? Who hurt me, or who did I hurt in this dynamic, in this relationship? What exactly happened? Okay, once that, okay, is clearly defined, which is not easy. You have to do this, or you have to be very honest with yourself. If not, then with a friend, counselor, pastor, all of these things are possible. And then afterwards, you can work on the forgiveness. Okay, what do you need to forgive? Okay, what's the debt that they have given to me? Maybe you think it's this much, but maybe it's not as much as you think. Or maybe you think, no, like everything is on me, but instead you realize, oh, actually this person has done this to me. Okay, and I need to recognize that. Then I can start to forgive. Okay? All right, that is the end of today's lesson. Any question with the lesson today? Yes, question, Adam? Uh, yeah, then, okay, so the question is, let's say you're blaming everybody, but at the same time, you forgive everybody. Even though the assessment was wrong, then isn't that okay? So I would say in that sense, your relationship with other people might be okay in a short term. But if the problem is not other person, most likely the problem is you. And so if you're, then the problem becomes that you are always blaming other people and you're never dealing with the issue that you actually have. And so because of that, you're always, I mean, I guess in that sense, you're not really getting better. Yeah, yeah. So I think in the long run, it's actually going to ruin your relationships, if anything. Yeah. Yeah, go for it. Mm.